Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are working on this Craftsman Snowblower. It's a little early, as you can see. There's no snow, still nice and sunny out, but we're going to give this machine a once over and report back to the customer and let them know what it needs to get it back in running condition. Got a few issues we've got to look at. Just off the top of my head, I found that the auger control is a little boogered. It ain't working so good. We have an issue here where the mounting bolts for the body are no longer secure. I believe the threads are no good in the holes. So I haven't started it. I haven't run it. I don't know if it runs. We're going to check the belts, general condition, give the drive system a little tune-up, and just basically a once-over. Let them know what it needs, then they can decide whether they're going to fix it up or what the deal is. So we'll get you in a stand, we'll get something going on this, and we'll figure out steps as we go. It's a little crusty, but generally good machines. We should be able to bring this back to life. All depends on what they want to spend. Hang tight, we'll get things started. Alright, first things first. It's got to run. The fuel tank is bone dry. There's nothing in it at all. I pressed the button on the bottom of the carburetor. No water came out, so that's a good sign anyways. Don't know when the last time it was run. No idea. Customer, when they dropped it off, said that the electric starter doesn't work. I did verify it. I plugged it in and all it does is growl. So the starter's no good, but it still has a recoil starter on it. So we should at least be able to get it running if it's going to run with the pull cord. So put a splash of gas in there and we'll get it fired up. First I'm going to check the oil, make sure there's some in it. There's no sense blowing up an engine just because you didn't check the oil. Oil in it. It's dark, but there's oil in it, enough to start it. Put that on the list. Needs an oil change. It's dark enough. It hasn't been done in years by the looks of it, so get some nice quality non-ethanol fuel in there. Don't need lots, we just need enough to get the carburetor going. Fuel valve is off. Let's give that a turn. It's on now. Let's see, we'll give it a sec, see if the carb overflows. Hopefully it won't. If it does, it tells us that we got a floating needle problem. I don't see anything coming out yet. Alright. Throttle up. Almost full. Full choke. Give her a couple of primes. Oh, gas dripping. Let's see. She's burning oil pretty good, and we got some steam. That's oil smoke coming off the muffler. But it does run. Carburetor definitely needs to come apart so we can have a look-see. Blowing oil. Could be that there was fuel in the oil, that it's actually bypassing the rings. Like I said, it needs an oil change anyways, so. But it runs. So that's a base. That's where we start. Make sure it runs. If it needed an engine, it wouldn't be worth fixing it for this customer. So it runs. Good. Now we'll move on. I did shut the fuel valve off just in case. I don't want the carb to overflow and fill the engine up with gas or drip all over the hoist. So I think next we might look at this problem. See what we can do with those screws at the bottom. Well, the holes are there. Might just be able to put nuts and bolts through them. Let's get it lifted up. We'll get the wheels out from underneath it so we can see what's going on and get a better assessment of the situation. Got the lift table lifted. I got a motorcycle jack underneath it to lift the rear wheels, the wheels of the snowblower off the ground. Just wanted to point something out here. Snowblowers use a solid axle, so both wheels get driven at the same time, which is great for traction, but it makes them very hard to move around on dry pavement because they get too much traction. They don't want to turn. So let me zoom in on this little, on the center of the wheel here. On this side, this is how you remove the wheel. There's this clip, just a little spring clip. And this one you lift it up, slide it out, and you can pull the wheel off. The other option with this clip is you lock it. When you shove the wheel on, shove it beyond where the hole is. So I can see the hole in the axle shaft out here. If you put that clip back in here, basically, this wheel will freewheel, and the other wheel is not being driven. Makes them much easier to maneuver when you're just trying to pull them or push them around. They steer very easy, but you do only have one wheel drive. So, anyways, they're not supposed to have a bolt in it. They're supposed to be this clip, so you can move that hub in and out to lock and unlock your axle. Anyways, that's a little tidbit of extra info. That one comes off easy. Now I can see what's going on here with this bolt. I think I'll just be able to put a nut and bolt in it. I'll check the other side. We'll see how easy it is to get the wheel off of there. This one here is well greased, which is good because usually they're seized on there. But let me go to the other side and pull that wheel off. If it's uneventful, we'll just carry on with the video. But if I've got to struggle with it, I'll get the camera back on. Well, the other wheel come off real nice. It was just a bolt and nut. Slid the bolt out, wheel slid off. So we're happy. So what you want to do is check your bushings here because it's just a brass bushing. There's not a whole bunch of play. Sometimes these wear completely out and does all kinds of weird stuff. But here's what we're dealing with here. I'm going to try and zoom in. That's not in, that's out. Okay, so this little hooked hole here is supposed to line up here, and a self-threading bolt goes in there. Well, this is a little worn and the threads are a little boogered. So what I'm going to end up doing is I will release the jack or jack this up to close this gap again, and I'm going to drill it right through here, drill through here at the same time, and I'm just going to put a small nut and bolt in there, and that'll fix it. Both sides. It's a quick and easy fix. If I were to try and weld a nut or anything inside here, it's a lot of prep work in the metal because of how rusty it is and oily, and it doesn't like to weld on that stuff. So that's all I'm going to do is I'm going to close that back up where it's supposed to be sitting, and I will drill a hole straight through, nut bolt, and it'll be fine. It'll be perfect. But yeah, easy peasy. Then we move on. Check the belts. Check the bearings in the front in the auger housing. Check to see if there's shear pins in there instead of bolts. Shear pins are there for a reason. They're not supposed to be bolts. So, let me get this closed up. I'll drill one side, show you how I do it, and I'll move on to the other side and get that one done as well. The carburetor is going to come apart. It's nice that it ran. It was good. It's easy to make sure that the motor is in good shape, the engine. But the carburetor is going to come apart. It is going to get cleaned in the ultrasonic cleaner and put back together, because it's going to need to be done. It's inevitable with the snowblower. They sit so long that you need to do it once in a while. So let me get this taken care of and we'll move on to the next thing. Okay, so what I've done is I've blocked up the auger housing, which is the front part here. Blocked it up with some little pieces of wood. I'm going to lower the motorcycle jack, and it should close that gap up when the weight of the rear assembly starts to come down. So let's slowly lower this down. It's going to close our gap up where it needs to be. We'll bottom it out. Nice and tight there. We're going to drill a spot just above where it was. Nothing in behind there I'm going to hit, so we're okay. And just nut the bolt. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch bolt. I'm going to use a nylock nut. Well, I'm not going to use this bolt because it's too short. So I'll get a 1 inch bolt, put it in there. Would have been ideal if it was just 2 pieces of sheet metal, but there's another brace in the back. 1 inch bolt. Get her started. And it is. You've got to get a wrench under there and a little impact. I'll reach under. The wrench on the nut. It is nylock, so it's going to be tight all the way down the threads. I'll do the same on the other side. And then what we'll do is we'll lift the motorcycle jack again and see how it behaves. Other side is done. Now when I lift this jack, this gap shouldn't open and the whole machine should tilt, which it is. Mission accomplished there. That's beautiful. We pop the wheels back on. It's already greased. That's golden. Perfect. Slide the wheels back on. I'm going to put it in the position where this side freewheels. That way I can move it around without too much effort. Especially on grass. These tires tend to dig in pretty good in the grass. So that side will freewheel. The other side will get its nut and bolt put back in it. We'll lower the hoist. No, actually we'll check out the front first. We'll check the auger bearings and all that fun stuff. Alright, we made it around the front of the machine here. We want to check these bearing blocks here. I also did check these are shear pins. They're not bolts, so I'm just moving the auger up and down to see if there's any play in the end of this bushing. Nice and tight there. Check the other side. It's good as well. We'll reach down in, make sure that the auger moves. It does move. Not really going to be able to do much with that without taking the belt off. It's sticky because everything's being, it thinks it's being driven so by the engine. That's good. Augers are in decent shape. Small bend in one of them. No big deal. I think this machine is older than the hours, you know what I mean? I don't think it was used a whole bunch. I think it's just old. So that's why we've got our rusty, scabby issues. But I don't think it's got much actual run time on it. So that's good. I think now we'll pop that cover off the belts. It's up here. Pull this cover off. We'll just give us access to our belts. After that, we'll pull the carburetor off, get her soaking in the ultrasonic. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to reposition here again and get something else rolling on this machine. in the interest of easier video and easier vision, I just slid the tires back off again because they're easy to get to. The tire actually comes to about here, and it hides this little screw that holds the belt cover on. I can use this if I take the tire off. One there. Let me get the one on the other side. Just one on each side. Slide that cover off straight up. Sometimes they can be a little fun to get around the chute, but with spiders, this model happens to have a toolbox on the top and up in here. Oh, look at that. That's the shear pins and little wrenches to change the shear pins. Nice. I think that's pretty cool. We'll just tuck that back in there for safekeeping. Now let's have a look-see at the belts. Got a real skinny belt in there. There's two belts. One is going to be for your augers. The other one is going to be for your drive. Get you out of the saddle there. And so there's our auger belt. Much bigger. There's our drive belt. Doesn't need to be so big because it's spring loaded, and if it's going to slip, it'll slip down on the friction disc, not necessarily on the belt. This one here, sometimes your augers can get clogged up real good with snow and ice or a newspaper, something, in which case the shear pins should shear, but if they don't shear, this belt is bigger in order to take the extra load. The pulleys are a little rusty. They haven't been used recently. There's our chain. Got lots of grease and oil on it. Somebody took care of this machine, or they took it to somebody who did. I don't know. Story behind this machine is the previous owner gave it to his daughter, but we needed a check over to make sure everything is good, and just to make sure that it's going to be reliable for them. The belts themselves actually look pretty good. I don't see any cutting or notches in them. Yeah. Good. Nice that we inspected them. I want to check that idler bearing. I don't know if you can just tell what I'm doing here. There it is. There's an idler on the other side there. That's what holds the tension on the belt. I'm checking to make sure the bearing's not falling out of it. Feels pretty good. This one here for the drive. Okay, so we're in good shape underneath there. I think at this height is the perfect height to take this shield off. We'll get our carburetor off, get it torn apart and put it in the ultrasonic at this point. And then after that's done, we'll put our cover back on, or while that is being worked on in the ultrasonic, we'll put our cover back on, put our wheels back on. We're going to lower the hoist. We're going to drag the machine to the back and flip it up on its nose so I can access the gears and the drive underneath there. I want to make sure the friction disc is clean and oil free. I want to make sure that there's a shaft in there. I'll show you when we get there, but there's a shaft in there that the friction wheel slides along, and that usually gets rusty and requires a little cleaning and some light lubrication. So hold tight. Let me get some other things going here. We'll get you in the stand and we'll pull that carb off. Yep, you're not going to see all the details, but you're going to see most of them. Let's get that off there. We'll get our choke knob off of there. They are just pressed on. You got to be careful you don't break them because they're old now and crusty. That just slides off of there because that stays with the carburetor. That is behind the shield, so that should stay where it is. So we got a 5/16 head here, 5/16 in the front, two Phillips here. These two Phillips actually bolt right onto the air horn of the carburetor. Let's get the front one out of the way. This little screw also holds the dipstick tube We don't want to wiggle jiggle that too much. We just want to gently move it out of the way so we don't accidentally pop it out of the motor engine. That 8's out. This 8 is out. 5/16. That's it. We're just hung on these two now. One here. One here. Our kill wire is still attached here under the cover. It's attached right here. Try and gently get that off of there. You don't want to break and bend anything. There we go. That slides right off. Now we have access to the carburetor. This is our primer line. This is the little rubber hose that goes to the primer. Let's get that off of there. Crack her loose with some pliers. That's off. Come on. Stay out of the way. Maybe. Most carburetors have more than one hole where the governor linkage and everything goes to. So, what I normally do, just because it's easy, is grab my phone and I'll take a picture of where the linkage was. And that's it. It's super simple. Now when I go to put it back together, I can tell exactly where things were. Very simple. Fuel line is up underneath here. Yeah, I know you guys can't see all the details. That's why I'm describing what I'm doing here. Rotating the clamp down so I can get a pair of pliers on it, and then slide the clamp off fuel line. That's off. Hose is loose. The fuel is off. I did shut the fuel off at the carburetor, or at the fuel tank, but there's going to be some left in the line, so we got a little rag here to catch most of it. Keep the hose off in there. This hose is crumbling. We actually need a new one. There we go, hose is off. And we get a little dribbles of gas. I think saving grace on this was that everything was empty. The fuel tank was completely empty. There's a little spring-loaded button under here that I was describing earlier. We can push that, and it's there. You can drain the carburetor bowl, and also, if you like, you shut the fuel off, and then you can drain the bowl here for storage. You can also drain water out of it. So if there's a little bit of water there in the bowl, this drain will get a lot of it out before you start your machine. So these do get water in them. If you notice, there's no air filter on these. So snowblowers don't have an air filter. None of these style did anyways. I mean, I can't make such a broad statement about every single snowblower on the planet, but all of these style of snowblowers, none of them had air filters. So now we're left with 2 bolts and that one linkage, which I took a picture of, and then the carburetor will be off. Well, let's move this stuff off out of my way. We got a paper towel down on the bench there. We're going to set the carburetor on it once it comes off. It's a 7/16 nut and Phillips on the back. Grab my Phillips screwdriver. 7/16 wrench that was on the other side of the bench again. Doesn't matter where you put it, it's never where you need it. Crack them loose. Didn't even have to hold the wrench. The nut stayed where it was. Now it's off. The screw can come out. Next, of course it's behind the chute. I can't get to it nicely. We got her. There we go. Trying to hold a nut with fingers in behind the carburetor and the carburetor on at the same time. Contortionist. Nuts off. Bolt out of this side. We're just going to tilt the carburetor to get it out of the Z bend of the linkage. And it was in, well, in the frame there, it would be the top right hole. Can you see it? There, that one right there. Anyways, whoa. Not too filthy. Don't know what's in the bowl yet though. I try not to turn them upside down because I want to see what's in the bowl. So, grab a wrench, 1/2 inch. Let's get you tilted down where you can see what I'm doing. Good enough? Yeah. I'm just gonna crack that. It wasn't very tight. Let's get my little gas catcher here. So this is the bowl nut, which is also the main jet. It usually gets plugged up with crap and corruption. Yep, there's a little bit of floaties in there. Carb's had a little bit of water in it. You can see that there's some rust in there. Get you a shot of the floaties. A little bit of junk in there. That'll all come out. We'll give it a wipe with a paper towel first, and then we'll go in the ultrasonic. Tear this carb apart. A great big honking gasket on it, which is all mangled and split. I got spares. I got extras. Grab my pliers here. Pull the pin out of the float. Lift the float out with the needle attached. It's a metal needle and a rubber seat. Alright. Emulsion tube is down inside here. It's plastic on this one. They usually pop out, not too bad. I'm not going to take all this off. I don't need to. Nothing in there I need to take apart to clean. So I would like to get the emulsion tube out of the center, because there's usually tiny little holes in there that require cleaning. There's a mixture screw. Well, there's a cap on it anyways. A little cap that I'm moving. I don't know why they cap it. And maybe they think they're hiding it, but anybody who works on these things knows it's there. I'll take the cap off and I'll take that idle mixture screw out, but what I'm going to do before I take it out is count the position of it in its current state. Interestingly enough, those 2 Phillips screws that we took out of this cover, when you line up the carburetor to it, that hole in the middle allows you to reach that idle mixture screw. Just can't do it with a cap on it. Doesn't do anything. So pull the cap, we'll check the screw, we'll record our turns. You get a screwdriver. This gives us a base point of where to start. We knew where it did run. I'm just going to lightly seat it, but count the turns. So we'll just, oh, you know what? Not even adjustable. that just tightens. So let's pop it out there and I'll show you what it looks like. A little pilot. There's a hole in the top there. One, and it matches to the other side. But also there is a tiny microscopic little hole down through the end. We've got some very fine wire. They're actually guitar strings that I use to clean that stuff out. And usually when it starts to surge and carry on, this is your problem. Pilot. What I'll do is I will soak it in the ultrasonic with the main jet first, and then I'll shove the wires down it. Let's have a look at our main jet here. So there's a hole here at the base, because this is the way it sits in the carburetor. Hole here, and one on the other side, and that lets fuel into the jet. And then there's a hole straight down here. That's what goes up into the emulsion tube. There's also a tiny little hole here that usually gets plugged up, and it's hard to see when it is plugged. So all of these are going to get fine wire pressed through them after they go through the ultrasonic cleaner. The ultrasonic cleaner will loosen up and help get that crud that's in there, if there is any. It'll help it soften up so we can get it out of there. Try and get that emulsion tube out of there, but won't be able to do it with that. It's green plastic on this one. Usually they're pink. Oh, look at that. It's loose. Nice. Sometimes you got to really fight them to get them out. It gets sticky in there. You don't want to press too hard on them. You don't want to distort them or warp them. Or just gently. So carefully grab them with this, because there is O-rings on there. There we go. These O-rings aren't even flattened out and hardened up yet. This has been looked at before. This emulsion tube only has one pair of holes in it, and right there. See the one there? That goes through to the other side. These O-rings are still nice and round. They're not flat yet. In a machine this old, they would have been flat by now. And usually this one gets deteriorated over time with ethanol fuel. This has been out and looked at before. Those O-rings are not original. Alright, so we've got all our parts out. The emulsion tube is clean. The holes are clean. It's plastic and rubber. I don't want to put it in the ultrasonic. Not that it's going to hurt anything with the solution that I use. It won't hurt it, but I'd rather not. So we're going to leave the seat in there for the needle. That should be good. Our pilot is out, so any passages in behind there are going to get cleared out. We've got our main jet, our pilot. I'll throw the float pin in there too. We'll dunk them in the ultrasonic cleaner with everything all together, including the float bowl to get rid of the smudgies in the bottom. And we'll see you in 15 minutes. Wow, it'll be instant for you guys. 15, 20 minutes for me. Maybe 25 by the time I get a coffee and something to eat. Alright, so our carburetor stew is done. All the little holes and passages have been cleared out with a wire. We're just going to throw this thing back together real quick, like, maybe. If it behaves, yeah, it should be fine. That's good. Emulsion tube we already determined was good. And go back in its home. Gently seated. There's our needle and float. So, I really don't know if there's truth to it. I haven't really read up on it. But these needles have a wire hook on them. And the tale is that the open end of that hook should face the incoming air. I don't know if it makes a difference. It's just something I heard. I'm sure over the years I have installed them differently than that. Never really had an issue. I don't know. If you know better than I do, which is quite likely, post me a comment. Let me know why. If you can verify it, or if you can denounce it as an old wives' tale, leave me a comment below. Inquiring minds want to know. We'll put a new gasket here. Maybe. If it behaves. There we go. And if you haven't seen other videos, I've gone over this before. Notice there's a shape, definitive shape to the base of this carburetor bowl. There's a flat raised section inside, and there's this little tiny, this little ridge here. You can see that there's actually a wear mark on it. What that is where your pin is. This is the orientation you want that bowl. How about I put it on camera so you can see it? You want it like this. Bowl is on. New bowl gasket, or bowl nut gasket. Give her a snug. Not gorilla tight, just couldn't. It should just bottom out. That's that. We'll do a quick test. I'm going to, this position the float is down, carb is empty. So the float is down, and it opens that needle and says, hey, I need fuel, I'm empty. So at this point I should be able to blow into here and have air go into the bowl, which I do. If I flip it upside down, the float should say, hey, we're full, and it should stop the fuel flow, which it does. So we're good. Good to go. Good to go. We got this baby bolted back up there. Get you looking where you need to be looking. Possibly. There we go. We're going to hook that linkage back into the appropriate hole. Luckily this one actually shows some wear on it. Well, not luckily. I know where it goes because I made a point of checking it, taking a picture of it, and telling you where it goes. So I remembered this time. It's always a good idea. Smartphones are an easy way to keep track of things. Smartphones. Could almost say any phone these days. There's very few non-smartphones around anymore. I say smartphones, I sound old. A newfangled phone thingy. So we got that nut to stay, to sit, sit, sit. Possibly. Might have got it. I might have. Maybe. Try and get that on there. Everything's in the way of everything to do anything. Will it start? I mean the engine. Pretty confident the engine will start. Will this bolt start? Just a little awkward to get everything in there and lined up. It started crossways. Oh, there we go. Snug that one up. Snug this one up. I'm going to put the He-Man screwdriver on there. Very big number 3 Phillips. Snug. snug. That's good. The fuel line I did check out while the carb was marinating. So the fuel line. And it's not too bad a shape. So we're just going to slide that back on there. This is a bit of a budget build. I'm not here to refurbish this machine. I'm just make sure it's reliable and functional. So that's good. That's on. Got our little primer hose in there. After the carb comes out of the bath, the ultrasonic bath, I normally just blow everything out with compressed air. Pallet's tight. Okay, we're ready to put our shield back on. Let's get our kill wire hooked up again. Get our choke rod in there. That's all set where it needs to go. There's a lot of things that need to bolt onto this, so I'm going to start everything loose until we get all the fasteners in, that we know everything is going to line up, because it never fails. You get more than one fastener in a component, you tighten one up, you get, or say you got 3 or 4 or whatever, you tighten them up as you go, and you get the last one and you cross thread it, or it doesn't go in at all. You got our dipstick tube turned back around where it's supposed to live. Perfect example. If I had to tighten those ones up, I would have never got that moved. So that's in, that's in, that's in, that's in. That's the 4 fasteners we took out. Let's start out and snug. Out and snug. These are number 2 Phillips. This is not an impact gun, guys. This is just a little 1/4 inch, basically a cordless screwdriver. It does impact, but it's very low torque. I've never broken anything with it. Big impact gun, on the other hand, there has been carnage in the past. Not on this machine, but in the past. Okay, choke knob. That just slides back over. Check the function. Yeah, it's got full range of function. This is our little high security key. Basically, that's just, when you pull this out, 2 contacts go together and short the coil, well, ground the coil so it doesn't spark no more. Got an old spark plug in there, it's going to get a new one. For the price of a spark plug, it gets a new one. It's Briggs & Stratton spark plug, so it's likely original. We got all our parts back in the carburetor that were in the carburetor. That's a good start. Huh? To move that shield out of the way, I had to move this auger control. And, well, we know the auger control's a little boogered, so it just kind of slid out of there. Wasn't too hard. I basically just unscrewed it from its bracket. I have to see if I can figure something else out. Well, you know what? The auger's stiff. I'm gonna get that auger lubricated first. No, not the auger, the chute. It's stiff where it rotates on the chassis. Let me spray some penetrating oil in there. My favorite penetrating oil, Seafoam Deep Creep. Seafoam people, if you're watching, I go through a lot of this. It's not cheap, but it does work. I love it. My preferred penetrating oil. I've been a mechanic a very long time, and I've used all kinds of penetrating oils. This is my favorite. It's worth it. It works very, very well. Let's turn it a little easier. Hasn't quite worked his way around in there yet. Oh, that's better already. There we go. It's Plastic on rusty steel. That's what we're dealing with here. Spray a pile in there and let it migrate and move around like it does. That'll help it. I don't like putting thick grease on snowblowers anywhere because it needs a snowblower in the winter and it's cold. And the grease thickens up and makes it hard to move. Well, that should work. That's better than it was. That's what matters. Better than it was. That's why it's here. You want it better than it was. There. Try and figure something out with that so it doesn't just easily walk out. Going one way it pulls itself towards the front, going the other way it tries to push itself away. If you put pressure on the rod this way, it stays in, mostly. These parts are worn out basically. There's not a whole hell of a lot I can do with it. Yeah. Nylon parts, right? Plastic parts rubbing on plastic parts. We'll see. We'll see how far they want me to go with it. But anyways, our carburetor is rebuilt. Wheels are back on. Belt cover's back on. Other than oil change, the machine is just about ready to go. So I'm going to fire it. I'm going to run it a little bit. We'll change the oil. And then I'll flip it up on its front and take care of the drive. We'll look underneath there at the drive system. Underneath there. There. Yes, there. We'll flip it up. We'll check all that out. I'm going to leave this wheel in a freewheel position so it's easier to move it around. It doesn't tear up my lawn. Alright. We're going to lower it. Now you know what, I can start it where it is. I'll start it where it is, let it run a bit, warm it up, and we'll dump the oil out of it. So you guys know, snowblowers are jetted very rich for in the winter because they're always used in the cold. So the carburetors are jetted a little richer, which means they kind of run not great in the summer. If you fire a snowblower up, it's actually running a little too rich for the ambient temperature. So although they do run, they don't always run very well. If you have to tune a snowblower, say if it had an adjustable carburetor or whatever on it, if you had to tune one, it's not advisable to do it in the summer. Do it in the winter when you're going to be using it. And do it outside because that's where you're going to be running it. You have to tune things for in the environment that they're going to be their intended use. All right, enough preaching. Move the camera. We'll get this thing. I'm just going to fire it up, warm it up, and then I'll dump the oil. You don't need to watch me firing up and let it run, but I'll turn the camera back on when I'm ready to dump the oil out. This might be an uh-oh moment. Already loosened this. Just started to unthread it slowly, so I don't want to lose oil everywhere. I found a bunch of water in there. Well, that ain't good. Very thin. Doesn't smell like gas. That is very thin. Supposed to be 10W30 in here. 10W30 is thicker than that. Another thing that I just found, or just saw, got an overflow. This carb is overflowing. We got a needle and seat problem or a float level problem. Well, it's coming off again. After that drains. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little block of wood underneath the auger housing at the front in the middle of the scraper bar, and just get that motor tipped back a little bit more, make sure we get more of the oil out of it. And yeah, we'll see. That's pretty crummy. But be careful, the carb's still dripping gas. I don't want to drip on my camera. I got the carb drip figured out. Two things. First of all, the float was just a tad high. You can actually see fuel coming out the throat of the carburetor. So I got that figured out, and I turned the fuel back on. Man, beautiful, no leaks. And I sat here for a second, I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden it dripped. Oh no, not fixed. And here's what I figured out to fix. That's a brand new bowl. Brand new float bowl. Had one in stock, because I do silly things like that. This is the old bowl. Let's see if I can get a zoom on it. This little mark right there, it's a little nick in the aluminum. It was leaking from there. That is so small, I couldn't even tell it was a leak. I took the bowl off and wiped it all down, dried it, put the penetrating oil in there, got nothing. Nothing at all. Put my very bright flashlight up inside the bowl. It was in it. I went to the shed actually, shut the door. It was dark in there. And I covered the hole with my thumb and I shone my light inside there. I didn't see anything. Didn't see a leak at all. Okay, well, it's got to be something. So I put a little blob of fuel in there, and sure enough, leaked from that tiny little nick. Yep, that'll do it. Anyways, new bowl. Fixed it up. Nice and dry. No leaks at all. Dry, dry. And it runs good. I did have to blow out the carburetor again. I did take it off. I just blew compressed air through everything. And gotta work it. So it runs good now. Finally, now we can move on to the drive. So I'm just going to throw that shield back on there, that cover. Then I can flip it up and new camera angle and move on finally to something else on this thing. Okay, so here we are the next day. Machine is all done, whatever we need doing, sitting on its wheels. There's usually a cover, a belly pan cover that's missing on this, but that's fine. So what I was talking about, the shaft and the gears sliding, that's this hexagonal shaft here. Usually they get rusty and then it's difficult to change gears. This one is nice and clean and greased. So I believe this machine had been serviced at a shop at one point. It's probably just a while ago. But what I did notice is that the friction wheel, there's a friction wheel, this is the drive disc. It's got rust in the area where, let's say, first gear would be. This will be your faster speeds, these are lower speeds, and then reverse is on this side. All I'm going to do is take some sandpaper and just get rid of that real abrasive stuff. We don't want to destroy this. The friction wheel itself, it's a little rubber disc. It's already got a flat spot in it, but it'll drive okay. So we're going to sand that, and we're going to clean it with brake clean. You want this dry. You don't want any oil or grease on it. We're also going to use brake clean on the rubber part of this wheel, just to make sure that it's going to grip good. And yeah, that's that. Okay, so you don't need to watch me sand this stuff, so I'm going to sand it and clean it with brake clean, and that'll be done for this. So I'll come back when it's clean and show you. There we go. I got the rough stuff off. Doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, but I got the rough stuff off so it'll be less abrasive on the wheel. Just use sandpaper and then a rag with brake cleaner on it and wiped it. Same rag with brake cleaner. I held it against the rubber wheel and just turned the wheel, and it just held it against there and cleared all the junk off the wheel itself. So that's good to go. This machine is ready. The only thing that doesn't function on it now is the electric start. It's not a really cheap part. It's, well, it all depends. I mean, for me, I have electric start on my own snowblower and I never use it. I always pull start it, but not everybody can do that. So if they want a pull start done, or if they want the electric start done, I'm gonna have to order one of those for them. I don't stock it, so I'm gonna let the customer decide that. But that's a matter of a few bolts on the side of the engine and a cord. That's easy to change. Just like get you to stand real quick here and show you. So there's our electric starter. Bolt here, bolt here. And sometimes they hook underneath here, sometimes there's bolts under there. And the cord just kind of wraps around. It's mounted here. It's all one piece. The inlet, the cord, and the starter is all one piece. Depends where you go. You can get them from 170 for a good aftermarket one. Sometimes 280. Really depends on where you're getting them. But again, that's their decision. We'll decide. We'll let them decide what they want us to do. So that's going to be the end of this video. We're going to close out on a upside down snowblower. Actually, I should mention, while I've got it up like this, if you're going to tip your snowblower forward, it's not going to hurt the oil level in the engine, but this has very, very little fuel in it. If you have more than half a tank or more, you would want to take this cap off and put a plastic bag under it and then tighten the cap up, because the caps are vented. And if you use the plastic bag trick, it'll stop the fuel from pouring out everywhere. So anyways, guys, thanks for joining me on this one. Another video. I know it's a little weird in the season now for snowblower videos, but it is what it is. This is what I've got here. It's a customer's machine. I want to get it done for them. So again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Leave me a thumbs up. And till the next one, take care.